Why don't you purify yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka?
And welcome to Enter VR, the podcast where we talk about everything virtual reality. I am your host, Chris Miranda, and today I am joined by Eric Greenbaum, a neuroscientist and patent attorney working out of the state of New York, I believe.
Indeed, New York.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you on the show, Eric. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Chris. It's I love to do these things, and I love to talk about VR and be a resource to the VR community.
And that you will, because I have a lot of questions for you.
Excellent.
Let's start with the first. What is attracting you to virtual reality?
I mean, I think like a lot of your listeners and a lot of the people that are active in the VR community, you know, childhood experiences, me particularly, it was the Lawnmower Man. I think that was in '92. I saw that, and, you know, people have talked about post-Avatar depression, where, you know, after seeing the movie Avatar, they wish that their life could be like Avatar, and I kind of had a similar experience after Lawnmower Man, feeling just kind of depressed and down, like, you know, VR is just amazing, and I wish I could have that in my life. And, you know, in '92, just kind of knowing that, you know, it was a long way off, and just kind of feeling down about that. And then I've been kind of tracking the development of the technology, you know, since then, and, you know, in the last few years, things have kind of gotten really exciting. And with the development of the Oculus development kit and that release, things have really kind of, you know, jumped up by orders of magnitude. And, you know, it appears that the age of VR is upon us, and I'm super excited about it, and I'm super excited to be a part of it.
How are the people around you reacting to these new things that you speak about? I mean, are people around you pretty open-minded about the, you know, virtual reality and this new paradigm-shifting technology, or are people still trying to catch up?
I think that there are kind of two groups of people. You know, there's the group of people that are kind of like in the know. And, you know, I was at Indiecade on Friday, and we were kind of just chit-chatting about over at the Oculus demo booth, and, you know, people that came over and saw it were just kind of blown away. And, you know, you try it on, especially the HD dev kit, you try it on and you just see the potential immediately. You know, gaming, video, online meetings, I mean, you name it, people see it and they get super excited. I think there's another larger group of people that, you know, you talk about it with them and they kind of give you a funny look, like they don't really know what you're talking about. You get people saying stuff like, I would never want to put something on my head, why would anyone want to do that? You know, in my experience, you know, my family kind of are some of those people that were very skeptical initially. And so, you know, I invite them over, I put them on the Rift coaster, and they quickly become converts, put it that way.
Yeah, it definitely is one of those things for the skeptics. You're going to have to try it out and see for yourself. And I can only imagine the impact of what the consumer model will do to people, you know, that are not open to this new thing yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been amazing that just the difference between the dev kit and the HD prototype is substantial. And, you know, people that have tried out the Crystal Cove are equally blown away by that. So, you know, the ultimate. The eventual consumer version, I think, is going to be an impressive piece of technology.
So, as a neuroscientist and an attorney, where do you see yourself in this midst of amazing things happening? You know, where would you like to see yourself? I don't know, 5 years from now.
Yeah. So, my core skills at this point are as an attorney. I'm not a computer scientist. Although, you know, I have some experience coding, and I'm working to kind of get more familiar with the coding aspects and the computer science elements. But right now, I think that the most help that I can be is as an attorney who understands VR technology. So I'm trying to position myself as a resource for companies and individuals that are, you know, trying to create virtual reality startups. so that, when they do have legal issues, when they do have questions about patents or trademarks, that, I'm someone that you can call. I generally don't charge for phone calls. If you quick questions here or there, I'm happy to give people guidance. And I really would like to be seen as a resource for, anyone that is starting a VR company.
For someone who's trying to start a VR company, generally speaking, what are the things that you have to look out for in the terms of, in the realm of the law?
So, the law is complicated, so there's a lot of things going on. So I'm going to just kind of talk about IP issues. There are, corporation issues, starting a company,
sure.
Partnership agreements. All of those things are important, and there are a lot of lawyers that can help with that. My particular expertise is in intellectual property and patents and trademarks. So the things that you want to kind of look at with regard to patents is, you kind of have to ask two questions. The first question is what I've created or what I'm creating, is that patentable? And if it is, should I file for a patent on that? And, how do I go about starting that process? Generally, my feeling is if you think you may have a patentable invention, you want to go ahead and get something on file. Because, even if the culture of your organization is such that you don't want to sue anybody, you kind of want to share your technology and share what you've created, by having a patent, it makes you more attractive to investors, and, going down the road, it kind of may give you leverage over other competitors.
Go ahead.
Sorry. You can follow up in just 1 second. The other issue is you want to know if what you've created and what you're trying to put out there infringes on somebody else's patent. And these are kind of slightly different analyses that you do in determining patentability or determining if what you're doing infringes on someone else's work. But you want to know if your product is infringing, so that you can kind of be proactive and avoid any potential headaches and liability down the road.
For sure. I familiarize myself with your blog and your articles on IP and patents in terms of virtual reality. And by the way, I'll post links on my blog and on the website to your blog, because it's very good work what you're doing. I'm really impressed. In terms of these companies, and what I'm noticing is there's these patterns of big companies putting out research and patent and money to make these patents. Like, I did not expect IBM or Canon to be at the top of the list in terms of companies filing for patents. Why do you think these companies? What purpose? What value do these companies gain from doing that? And yet we haven't seen a product at all that, to my knowledge, that takes advantage of the technology.
So, as a general proposition, big companies especially patent a lot, because having a patent portfolio adds value to your company. Mm. And if you have, shareholders, particularly in a public corporation, you owe a duty to them to build value in the company. So, companies like IBM have a huge R&D budget. They do a lot of research and development. And it's my understanding that over the last, 5 years, IBM is the number one patent filer in the country, possibly in the world. So if you develop something in an IBM laboratory, they'll file a patent on it. They'll get a patent, and they'll sit on it, and maybe they'll sell it, maybe they'll license it down the road, maybe they'll use it as a defensive measure. If someone sues them, they can countersue. There are a lot of reasons, and very often, filing and getting a patent is easier than developing and releasing a product. Mm-hmm. So there are people that they'll have the patents on it, and they'll just kind of sit on them, and they won't be actively involved in developing virtual reality products or virtual reality services, but they'll have R&D in place where they've made discoveries or they've made findings that are relevant to VR.
So one thing that that I pay attention to is this patent war between Samsung, Google, Apple. These big companies, they really go at it with their armies of lawyers to, I don't know, get a competitive edge over the other. In a hypothetical universe where Oculus, mind you, this universe could be very possible, where Oculus VR becomes a billion-dollar company, what would stop Sony from jumping in on this patent war bandwagon and trying to stifle competition there?
Well, so there are a few things that would kind of forestall that eventuality. The first kind of most obvious technical one is if Oculus isn't doing anything that infringes on a Sony patent, then they wouldn't have a strong case and they wouldn't spend the money to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not an expert on all of Sony's patents. I haven't kind of combed through them at the level of detail where I would be able to give an opinion on whether Oculus infringes on any of Sony's patents, but a lot of what Oculus has done is based off things that are in the public domain. When they started out, they were kind of billed as an open source VR HMD. And so a lot of what they're doing, at least kind of at the top level, is stuff that has been out in the public domain for such a long time that no one has a patent on it. One of the first virtual reality patents that's out there that was issued in 1960 was for a stereoscopic display wherein you had two lenses focused on two television screens.
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, it's very similar to what Oculus is doing. The difference is, we're now using LCD screens, and in the patent they talked about kind of CCTV like tube screens, but the general concept is the same.
Mm-hmm.
So the overall Oculus design is probably not patentable, and there probably is not a patent out there that is going to be a major problem for the overall design.
What is the worst case scenario? Coming from your experience, I try to imagine worst case scenarios in terms of patent law and IP, in the realm of IP, and I don't know if I have a realistic or well-grounded mentality or notion of what is the worst thing that could happen. Perhaps you could enlighten me and give me some ideas as to what's the worst that could happen for consumers, for VR, for Oculus in terms of this world of patents.
A worst case scenario is that there is a patent out there that Oculus is unaware of, or that they've kind of are not paying attention to,
mm-hmm.
that covers some critical aspect of their technology, and they try to they go to release their product and they get blasted with a patent infringement lawsuit, and under kind of a worst case scenario type of circumstances, it could delay the release of a consumer development kit, a consumer version of the HMD.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like I said, I don't see that as particularly likely, but you asked for hypothetical worst case scenario.
Sure.
That's the hypothetical worst case scenario. And I think a more realistic worst case scenario is there could be patents out there, that either some of these big players have,
mm-hmm.
that may be critical for certain developments or certain technology in the VR space. That people will have great ideas and they'll have wonderful tech demos for something super cool, but they'll look through the patent literature and they'll see like, oh look, this guy has a patent that covers this, and he's not willing to license it, or he wants a exorbitant licensing fee, and we feel that it's a strong patent and we don't want to litigate, so we're not going to move forward with developing our technology. That to me is a worst case scenario. Is you have people ready, willing, and able to release really, really cool stuff, and because of fear of lawsuits, they're not doing it. I'll kind of give you an example. One of the side projects that I'm working on that I'm really interested in is exercise in virtual reality. And there are a lot of patents that kind of deal with the interplay between computers, exercise bikes or exercise machines, and using the exercise machines as controllers for a display playing a video game. And, I've spoken to a few people about it, and, they're unwilling to move forward with certain aspects of these projects because there is IP out there that, they're worried about. And, that to me is a shame, and that's one of the, it's one of the big costs of a strong patent system.
Is our patent system broken? Because that, I mean, why are these amazing ideas? For example, what you just mentioned, fitness and virtual reality. I mean, it just feels like it could go hand in hand. That stereotype of the lazy, fat gamer could go away in a generation where people will be motivated inside virtual worlds to keep themselves and their bodies healthy, and yet the people that want to work in them are scared or fear legal retaliation over innovating and bringing about the future. So is this a system of the patent system itself, or is there something bigger? Why is this happening?
There are a lot of issues. I mean, on a kind of a first level, the patent system is a kind of a nice, elegant system. A lot of people think, if we didn't have patents, we would have kind of this system of openness and sharing. And I don't believe that to be the case. I think that the alternative to a patent system is secrecy. People will keep their ideas secret, and they won't ever talk about them, and they won't share them. So one of the nice things about a patent system is, in order to get a patent, you have to really disclose in very exact detail how your invention works, how to make it, and how to use it. So you make this disclosure, the disclosure becomes public, and everyone can see it, and everyone can learn from it. The cost of that is, the person who discloses it, the person who gets the patent on it, has a monopoly on that invention for 20 years. So, there's inherently a problem, because monopolies are bad for competition, monopolies are bad for business, but, it's that kind of balance between disclosure, sharing, and monopolies that the government, the legislators have decided was a fair balance.
Can you think of a technology that has benefited from the current system, and perhaps have you looked at other technologies that have not benefited from the current patent system?
I mean, the standard response to that question is, the biotechnology and drugs benefit from the system, and software and computers do not benefit, because of just huge differences in the way the industry works. If you have a molecule that, let's say works for treating cancer, and you develop that molecule, you spend $500 million in R&D, doing the tests, getting a formulation, getting everything approved by the government, approved by the FDA, and you start marketing that. You've spent between $500 million and $1 billion to get that drug onto the market.
Wow!
And you need that. That patent gives you market exclusivity, and it allows you to recoup the costs of that R&D. But for the patent system, people would, as soon as someone got the drug approved, it's easy to, if you're an organic chemist anyway, it's easy to copy a molecule and just start kind of pumping it out. Mm-hmm. So without the patent system, you would essentially see a stop to, the development of new pharmaceuticals and new biotech products. You don't need more than one molecule. You have one molecule, and that's your drug. On the computer side, things move super fast, and a product that comes out today was built upon all the things that came yesterday and the day before. So, with a 20-year patent life, you can have a line of code or a concept in computation that can really lock out the development of future technologies. So, I think that there are definitely issues, there are definitely problems in the patent system, particularly as they relate to computers and software, that there are smart people, smart lawyers, smart legislators that are kind of working to solve the problems, but there are definitely issues.
Right. I don't mean to get too off tangent, but going back to the whole pharmaceuticals and drugs, to my understanding, the person who created or came up with the polio vaccine made it free and patentless forever. And and to my understanding, we were able to eradicate polio because he went off and patent this cure. Is there? I mean, I'm sure there are instances of people who have come up with cures to amazing things, and because of patents and wanting to keep them secret, or I don't know, is that something that happens regularly, or are you something that you are aware of?
I mean, I'm not aware of a lot of any examples where someone kept something, had a breakthrough in the medical field, and that breakthrough didn't get to the public because of secrecy or because of a patent issue. There could be an example out there that I don't know, but I'm not aware of one.
Right.
I'm not gonna what Jonas Salk did with the polio vaccine and not getting a patent for it. I mean, that is a laudable, selfless act. The counter argument for that would be, had he kind of patented it and licensed it and got licensing fees for, distributing the polio vaccine, which he would have, the government would have helped to get that polio vaccine to everyone who needed it. Had he kind of reaped, $10 million or $1 billion in profits, he could have then, used that to work on, a cancer vaccine or something else. So, I mean, there's always a counter argument, and especially kind of in the medical space, you need such huge amounts of money to do research that sometimes patenting and kind of charging money for your products is the only way.
So, as a neuroscientist, what made you venture into law and technology? I mean, is there something about the medical field and that world that is lacking, or some? I mean, what made you switch?
What made me switch? It really is the pace of development.
Mm-hmm.
Things are glacially slow. It takes a really, really long time to get anything done. It takes a really, really long time to kind of take a scientific discovery and turn it into something that is going to be good for people and help people. And, I admire to a great extent the people that have the patience to do it. But, you have to kind of, above all, true thine own self be true. You have to kind of know yourself and know what makes you happy. So, I need like a little bit of a faster pace, and I want things that, I can see results faster. So, being a patent attorney, I get to work with a lot of different projects, a lot of different people that at various stages of development, and I get to be, really useful immediately in helping them to develop their tech.
Going back to the patent stuff, the road to VR, and I saw in your article on your blog about how the first shot has been fired in terms of the legal wars that the virtual reality space will face. In terms of, there's this lawsuit happening between Oculus VR and Oculu.
Oculu, yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What your knowledge is so far?
Sure. I was actually able to pull the complaint. So I've kind of read it through, and I'm a little bit more familiar with
Awesome.
it than even when I posted that article. And I'll update that article later today. But yeah, so this is a trademark complaint. Oculu LLC is a streaming video provider, and they're suing Oculus VR on 7 different causes of action. Um, it is trademark infringement. I'm just going to pull it up so I don't make any mistakes here. So it's trademark infringement, false designation of origin, trademark dilution. They're trying to cancel Oculus's applications for marks that they have pending in the trademark office. Unfair business practices under California law, California trademark dilution under California law, and injury to business reputation under California common law. So, it all, there are kind of specific elements of each of these causes of action, but generally it comes down to, consumers are going to be confused between, Oculu and Oculus VR. And as a result of that confusion, people aren't going to understand, or people might think that Oculus VR is really doing this streaming audio, and Oculu is associated with, virtual reality. And as a result of that, Oculu is saying that their reputation is suffering.
I can kind of see that. I'm just gonna play the devil's advocate and try to put myself in the shoes of the CEO of Oculu. I'm looking at if I were him, I'm looking at this company that is going to be massive. I mean, if I were him, I would look at him and be like, that company, Oculus VR, is going to overshadow everything I've ever worked for. Because all of a sudden on Google, everybody's gonna go directly to Oculus VR. I mean, maybe that's what I can think of. Like,
yeah, no, that's actually something that they say in the complaint, is that over the last few months, if you search Oculu, the first thing that comes up is Oculus. So that kind of undercuts their SEO strategy. One of the issues and one of the things to kind of keep in mind here has to do with a fundamental of trademark law, which is if you choose as your trademark something generic, you run the risk of having competing marks. I did a little research into it, and I think there are 26 or they're somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 registered marks that incorporate Oculus, the word Oculus, or Oculu.
Whoa.
And so we have surgical devices, we have rifle scopes. There are a lot of things that have Oculus incorporated into their trademark.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons is Oculus means eye. So kind of a lot of companies that deal with eyes have adopted Oculus as part of their mark. And if I was Oculus's attorney, and I'm sure they have excellent IP attorneys that they're working with, that's one of the things that I would argue. I would say, like, look, Oculus is a Latin word that means eye. Our company deals with eyes. Their company deals with video. There are also a lot of companies out there that have incorporated Oculus into their name, and the weakness of the mark cuts against Oculus' case.
So in terms of trademark, that's an interesting thing you mentioned just now about how if it's a generic word, usually you're gonna have dozens of other people with the same word in them. So for people who are small time trying to get started, like are we gonna have to invent new words in the English language to avoid that Titanic crash?
So there's a type of mark called a fanciful mark, which is kind of a word that doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
And those words are make the best trademarks. So take Exxon. Exxon, EXXON, that's not a word in the English language. And you would never use Exxon to describe something other than the company that bears that name. So that's a very strong mark. Similarly with Kodak. There isn't a Kodak maybe there is. I would never use the word Kodak to describe anything other than the company that bears that name. So if you're looking to have a strong trademark, invent a word.
Thank you for the legal advice for free.
Little nugget for you guys out there.
Yeah. So how do you think this situation is going to get played out on with between Oculu and Oculus?
How do I think it's going to play out? I don't know. I'm not going to guess on what Oculus is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, their choice is either fight or settle. You know, it's a internal business decision that they will make with in consultation with their advisors and their investors possibly, and they'll decide whether, you know, they want to kind of settle with Oculus to make this go away, or if they want to say, you know, you guys are wrong, and we feel that, you know, this is a grab for money, and we're not going to play that game with you. We will not be intimidated, and, you know, we'll go to the mattresses on this, and, you know, we'll see you in court. And, you know, the question becomes, you know, they can settle for cheaper than it would cost to litigate the case, but in so doing, they may open themselves up and paint themselves as a target for other people that, you know, are looking to kind of see if they can make a quick buck by filing a lawsuit.
Yeah, it's I think it's a litigious society, the one we live in.
It is.
And so I think, I mean, if I were Palmer, and Palmer, I'm sure you're not listening to this, but this is what I would do. I would go Genghis Khan on these motherfuckers. And by motherfuckers, I'm talking about, like, you guys are awesome people, Oculus. I mean, you know, but what if you listen to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History? I'm a huge fan of Dan Carlin and his Hardcore History, especially the Genghis Khan podcast. Holy moly, you have to listen to this thing.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, so there's this one. So the Mongols, what they used to do is they used to just destroy cities, and they would make examples out of one city by completely decimating them, and the others would, like, all right, well, we're just gonna surrender because I know what you did to the other guys. So, for example, there's this one instance in which they were storming a Middle Eastern city, and one of Genghis Khan's son died in battle. So Genghis Khan brings about his fiance and sits her on a golden chair in front of the gates of the city they were storming. They gather all the citizens of that city, women, children, old people, everyone, and 100,000 of them had their heads cut off right in front of her, as a gift to her, listen, this is what they get for having killed. And so what I'm thinking Palmer should do, that he should go Genghis Khan on them and make an example out of them.
Well, I mean, I appreciate the sentiment. Of course, you know, no one is advocating any type of violent action.
Definitely not.
This is a business dispute that will be handled by attorneys in the courtroom. And, you know, we love Oculus and we love VR technology, and, like, we want to see them succeed. And anything that kind of stands in the way kind of makes us angry, and you know, reasonably so. But, you know, this is just a business dispute, and, you know, I can assure you that the people inside of Oculus recognize it as this is just a business dispute, and, you know, we'll get through this, and, you know, whether we litigate or whether we settle, you know, it's just kind of one more obstacle. And, you know, when you are putting out a new piece of hardware, you know, the challenges associated with, you know, sourcing the manufacturing and developing the technology and testing it and all of those things, you know, that's the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, compared to doing that, you know, dealing with a trademark infringement lawsuit is, you know, is small potatoes.
Definitely. I think definitely not advocating violence, but I do think that the warfare of the 21st century is being held in courtrooms and business. With business, that's what. Yeah,
and look, you know, in a real way, I mean, maybe that's preferable. I mean, better that we deal with each other in depositions than, you know, with swords and axes.
Definitely. So what could the court even decide here? Like, what could the judge say? Like, all right, Oculo, you can't. This is it. I mean, what would be the outcome if this went full out litigation? I mean, I'm sure you don't want to be playing the guessing game, but I like that. So I don't know if you want to indulge me.
It would the judge or the jury, as the case may be, would kind of look at each side's arguments. You know, Oculus is going to argue that their mark is strong and it is incontestable and protectable, and Oculus is going to try to attack that. And, you know, Oculus is going to say that, you know, customers would not be confused. The customers that are looking to buy a virtual reality headset are different from the customers that are going to be buying streaming video. You know, they'd probably touch on the Oculus issue, that it means eye, and it's a generic term that is relevant to not only the video and the head-mounted display industry, but a variety of other industries that have adopted the word Oculus as part of their trademarks. So those are the arguments that will go back and forth, and the decision will be, look, they either plaintiff, either Oculus has proven or has not proven, the likelihood of each of these causes of action. So with regard to trademark infringement and customer confusion, for example, they would say, plaintiff has not made its case that customers will be confused, therefore, case dismissed. Or they'll say, they have made their case, and therefore, Oculus is liable for damages, and stand by for the damages phase of the trial, where Oculus will have to prove, what Oculus owes them. Those are the kind of how it could go.
You think this is a sign of things to come for this burgeoning, newborn industry?
I think that litigation is a cost of doing business, and every field deals with litigation. Big companies have big litigation budgets. That's why legal is a department in virtually every corporation, because this is, like you said, business is war, and the warfare of business is conducted in a courtroom.
What is the impact of this on the small time indie developers? Will it have an impact on small time indie developers that want to create experiences we know that there's patents for hardware for sure in VR, but what about software?
There definitely are software patents out there that developers want to be aware of. I'll give you an example. There are I see a lot of as a neuroscientist and as a patent attorney and as someone who's interested in VR, one of my particular areas of interest is using virtual reality technology to treat mental disease and disorder. And one of the things that has been really fruitful in that realm is treating PTSD with exposure therapy in virtual reality. And there are a bunch of games out there that I've seen kind of on the Oculus subreddit. They're talking about we would like to use our game to, is it called Nevermind?
I'll have to look it up.
There's a biofeedback game where as the player's heart rate increases, the game gets harder. And there's discussion that using that game can be helpful in treating people with anxiety or possibly PTSD. And there are other games out there, that's just one example. There are other games out there that are kind of talking about treating anxiety or other psychiatric disorders using these games. And there's an ongoing litigation currently where this guy, Lamson, the developer of a virtual reality PTSD and psychiatric treatment method, a software method, is suing the United States government because they are using, his patented method. So, anyone who is talking about PTSD in virtual reality in their game needs to be aware of this litigation and needs to be aware of this patent. And that's just one. There are others as well.
Speaking of our litigious society, and again in that realm, in the context of being an indie developer, do you think we will see the day when an Oculus Rift developer will get sued for example, like scary games, horror games? They're going to be very intense inside of virtual reality, and I don't know if it's possible, but do you think it's in the realm of possibility someone will come out and say, this game gave me PTSD. This game has, done emotional harm to me. I would like compensation.
That's a very interesting and insightful question. It's actually something that I'm actually working on an article currently that discusses, what are the risks, what are the product liability risks of people that are putting out games and these head-mounted displays for the risk of psychological injury. There's a type of product liability called failure to warn, where if you release a product that otherwise is safe and is free of design and manufacturing defects, but you haven't warned the population about the extent of the dangers associated with the product, and someone gets hurt, then you can be liable under what's called failure to warn product liability. So people that are putting out super scary games and people that are putting out games that might be upsetting, now they may want to consider incorporating certain warnings, with their product, with their game, just to kind of let people know that, look, this is a possibility. I read an article recently where they put veterans returning from the Middle East through a virtual reality simulation of simulated Middle Eastern environments. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that the soldiers were saying was that, look, I would be concerned that if veterans saw this and they weren't carefully monitored, that it could trigger them, and it could trigger an anxiety episode or possibly even PTSD. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that idea is out there, and that concern is out there, and people that are kind of putting out horror games or scary games in a virtual environment that has high degrees of presence and really lets you feel like you're there, that's something you want to be aware of.
From a neuroscientist perspective, I mean, there is. I mean, would you do the same for a horror movie? Would you do? I mean, my thinking is the following: really, virtual reality is a whole different experience for your brain than watching a movie. So, does that? I mean, would developers have protection under that by saying, hey, listen, horror movies are doing it. There's no reason why. But then again, you're right. You have to stay protected, because that's why the Wii, Nintendo, every time you turn on the Wii, it tells you, hey, this could give you seizures. It could,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the virtual reality is you're hacking your brain. You're tricking your brain into thinking that you are in the game. You're in the virtual environment, and that trick is powerful, and it's fundamentally different from sitting in a movie theater, even if it's an IMAX 3D movie theater. So, especially when you're talking about warning, it doesn't really cost you that much more to develop a set of warnings. And the risk of not doing it is great. So,
Do you think courts will see virtual reality differently then? I mean, considering all the things we've spoken about, do you think courts will look at virtual reality from a different perspective than any other medium out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that courts will recognize that the degree of presence that can be. There's a body of scientific literature that talks about presence, mm-hmm. and the effects that presence can have on users, and a court won't be able to ignore that, and it's going to be something that they have to deal with, and especially when you talk about the developer's own words coming back to bite them, that. When you talk about, with virtual reality, experience things that you've never experienced before. Get into the game, unlike anything you've experienced on your monitor. Those are things that can be used against you, in the circumstances of a litigation.
So is it? Well, okay. So I have two questions. One is, because of this, do you think that someone can sue a VR developer for addiction, for getting addicted to their particular experience / place in VR?
Well, so the issue with I think that's another issue that you want to pay attention to. I mean, mm-hmm. Video game addiction is it's recognized. It hasn't been incorporated into the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual for mental disorders, which is kind of, if you get into the DSM, then you're, officially a disease or a disorder. Video game addiction has not been put into the DSM because, there isn't enough research on it out there. However, they talked about putting it in, and, they acknowledge that it's something that we need more work on. So if regular video games have this potential to be addictive, then a fully immersive video game or other virtual experience that is more fun or orders of magnitude more immersive and kind of more engaging than a computer video game or a standard computer video game, then that's something to be aware of, and it may be something that you want to put on a warning label.
Definitely. You spoke about VR developers and VR community speaking about virtual reality in ways that, I mean, it's true. It's something that we've never seen or experienced before quite yet. And so do you think we should tone down the hype train in order to protect the VR in the legal realm, or is there a balance to be struck?
I mean, my personal feeling is we don't let the legal system dictate our research and development efforts. If you want to put out a product and you want to call it the best thing since sliced bread, and you can back that up, do it. And this is my personal opinion. This is certainly not legal advice, right? But I don't want the legal system to get in the way of developing this technology. I want to see this. I want to see VR, make a big splash and become the next big thing. And I think that it's going to. I would hate to see kind of legal issues slow it down. So, you want to be aware of it from a developer standpoint and from a corporate standpoint. You want to understand what the issues are, and you want to understand how you can best protect yourself against people coming after you, whether it is intellectual property or product liability or anything else. The best way to kind of limit your liability is to be proactive. Retain people that really understand the issues and will help you to develop a comprehensive strategy for risk mitigation and minimization. And that's the best advice that I can give, is just kind of really kind of work with smart people and understand what the issues are, and you do your thing, you develop, and you work with lawyers that will help you to protect yourselves.
Speaking of being proactive, do you think it should? I mean, it's an industry. Virtual reality will become an industry. Do you think? And every industry has a lobbyist. Do you think that perhaps we should start pulling our money together and starting a Kickstarter to fund some lobbying for virtual reality? I saw I was listening to Planet Money, and they were talking about how for every dollar that a company spends lobbying, they get a return on investment of 1,000%. So that's insane. Do you think? I mean, it's a matter of time, but do you think we should be more proactive about getting inside the halls of government to make sure VR has a prosperous, stable future?
Look, the idea of kickstarting a lobbying effort is a really interesting and really good idea. Yeah, I mean, if there are industry groups out there that want to put that together and to kind of raise awareness of how virtual reality can be a boon to the American economy, then yeah, kickstart it and send someone to Gucci Gulch and start talking about letting the senators and Congress people know that this is here, and pay attention to it.
For sure. How would this lobbying work? Are we gonna have to buy the senators plane tickets to Alaska, or are we gonna have to treat them to dinners? Stephen Colbert did this with their super PAC. I mean, the doors have been swung open for money to infiltrate into politics. I mean, it's been around forever, but I mean, it's since Citizens United, it's been swung right open. So why not use the system to our advantage? I figured.
Yeah, I mean, it's there, and there are lobbying firms in Washington that you would retain them, and they have relationships with the right people, and they know how to get their calls answered. So if people are interested in doing that, then there are kind of well-worn plans on how to get lobbying time in Washington. Go for it.
How do you think governments around the world will react to this new technology? And by that I mean, here is this new industry being born, and I kind of see it in a because I studied politics in college. I kind of see it from a geopolitical perspective. For a while, I was looking at Sony as being from Japan, and European countries putting out their own smallish, like Durovis, like VR Ace, and then the United States has Oculus. And so I figured this is a geopolitical race to see who is gonna start this new industry. And so far, Oculus is winning. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think am I thinking too big out here?
No, I mean, I think that any new technology is going to kind of have its infiltration path, and it'll be interesting. I'm interested to see how it unfolds. I mean, I think it can either be. My guess is it's going to be kind of a slow adoption because it is new. It does involve kind of wearing something on your head, which I think people may be reticent to try. But I think that it's going to kind of grow slowly, and then it's going to explode.
Yeah. What is it? Do you think it's going to become? It'll explode just over time by itself, or do you think there will be a catalyst, like an app, or someone getting behind it, or I don't know. What would you expect it?
Yeah, it may be something like the first killer app, or the first killer game, or the first killer VR movie experience that makes people that had been reticent to kind of buy an HMD or try one out. They may hear their friends talking about, oh my God, did you try this? It was amazing. I've never seen anything like it. It may be something like that kind of brings people into VR.
Follow me down the rabbit hole. I say this every time that I'm about to say something crazy. So,
okay.
So do you think one day people will find ways to do illegal things with virtual reality head-mounted displays? And by that, I don't know. I'm thinking BDSM fetish communities create their own app, torture dungeons for their own, and then someone comes in and mods it to become a legitimate torture dungeon where he, I don't know, waterboards people inside of virtual reality for fun. I don't know. Do you think?
Yeah, it just popped into your head.
Yeah.
Right, Chris?
Yeah. I swear, I just came up with that.
But look, I mean, if there's one thing that we've learned over time is that technology is neutral, right?
Yes.
It is not good. It is not bad. It's the people will use it for good things and they'll use it for bad things. And can you think of a technology that's come out that hasn't been kind of put to nefarious uses? I mean, everything that comes out and everything that anything that's powerful, people are going to use for wickedness.
Yeah.
So, the short answer is yeah. I mean, expect to see VR crime, and what that VR crime is going to be. I mean, who knows? But
Yeah, VR crime.
There are bad people out there.
There are. Do you think we will see VR lawyers, VR courts, a VR legal system, perhaps? I mean, again, we're in the rabbit hole, so please embrace it.
Yeah, no, I think if you really kind of want to go down the rabbit hole and like really start thinking like, forget games, forget entertainment, how is virtual reality going to alter society generally? I mean, yeah, I think that you'll start to see all of the functions and all of the things that we do, in reality 1.0, start to be mirrored in virtual reality. I mean, why should I have to get on a train and go have a meeting in New York City? Or why should I have to commute, 45 minutes a day in my car to sit in an office? When I can just, be in my head-mounted display, being monitored by, a Kinect or some other movement tracking device, and I can be I could be in St. Thomas and working in my virtual office, and people can live wherever they want, and we'll meet in our virtual space, and we'll work face to face, virtual face to virtual face.
Yeah.
But I mean, why couldn't that happen? And you want to talk about like some of the goods that the good things that can develop out of VR is like if you eliminated commuting, if you kind of took the commute off the table, how much would we save in gas? What environmental impact would the elimination of the commute, confer to our country and to the world? And I think you start to ask questions like that, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, games are cool, but if we could work in a virtual environment and never have to commute again, then now we're talking about global change.
Yes.
Global change that is kind of initiated by VR.
Yeah.
And I believe in that. I think that that's coming. I think it's going to be a while. I mean, don't expect it. Don't throw away your car keys yet. But I do believe that that's coming.
I think I'm right there with you. Can't wait to join you in the Matrix. Do you think it's gonna be? And I would to add to that, I would think that the workplace of the future will be inside virtual reality, and it will be somehow gamified, because we've done so much progress so far in terms of gamifying almost everything that we use on our smartphones, and so why not? Then again,
yeah, I'm constantly unlocking achievements on my Weather Channel app. I don't really understand, what I'm doing or what I'm unlocking, but I'm like a 6th level meteorologist or something.
Oh man, yeah. So it's gonna be a very fascinating future to live in. But we're still in the rabbit hole. I would think that there will be enemies to be made from this new paradigm of change, because change is scary to some, and when us or some will win, others will stand to lose, and that's when the car companies are going to come out, and the petrochemical companies are going to come out, and they're going to start counter lobbying and trying to figure out ways to buy more cars, keep burning that oil, because because I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this VR economy, this VR paradigm, metaverse will have its share of enemies, and where do you think they may come out of?
I mean, if you look at right away, who's going to lose out, at least in this first round of VR. I mean, you have, I think games and video are going to be the first things that kind of blow up. So the people that are locked into, traditional models of delivering games and video, if they don't adapt to, we're in a rabbit hole, we're assuming that, VR is going to blow up.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't adapt to that changing environment, then they're going to lose. I mean, Blockbuster is like the perfect example. I mean, they were ubiquitous. They were everywhere.
Yeah.
And they ignored the internet. I mean, how could you possibly ignore the internet? It was like, of all the classic blunders, it's just like, don't get involved in the land war in Asia, and don't ignore the internet. And they just dropped the ball, and they lost, and they're gone. And it's just, that whole industry, that whole, brick and mortar movie rental location is done. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But they didn't have to lose, and the traditional media companies don't have to lose, and the ones that recognize that VR is coming, and the ones that kind of get in early and adapt and kind of position themselves to be players in the VR space are going to win. And it's times of change are opportunity.
Yeah, and you sort of bringing up Blockbuster sort of reminds me of what's happening right now with Netflix, and how they're being. I don't know if it's factual, but I know that on the San Francisco subreddit, there's people who were reporting that their Netflix House of Cards the other day was being their bandwidth was being throttled down by Comcast or the other companies. So what we're seeing play out in terms of consuming media through Netflix and Hulu versus the cable companies, I think could see itself play out inside of virtual reality, when the more established players, instead of innovating, decide to use litigation or use other methods to stifle competition. But
yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, so far, I mean, again, a little bit off tangent, but do you think Netflix will walk away from this okay, and do you think the cable companies will succeed in keeping keeping themselves relevant?
Yeah, this is a really tough question. The net neutrality issue is a big one,
Yeah.
and you know, my understanding, I'm not certainly not an expert on this issue, but my understanding is that if Netflix wanted more bandwidth, they could pay for it, and you know, if it comes to that, then they could raise their subscription fees a little bit and kind of spread the cost that way and kind of keep their bandwidth intact.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a tough one. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I can see a little bit of the other side where if you are a service provider, an internet service provider, and kind of one company is eating up 90% of your bandwidth to the point where other people's sites are kind of not getting through, then maybe they should kind of carry their weight a little bit more. But it's a very complicated issue that I'm certainly not an expert on, so I'll kind of leave that to the telecom experts.
Yeah, and well, it's going to be interesting to see itself play out. In terms of you talked about net neutrality, how will this issue of net neutrality affect virtual reality in the future?
I think that the Netflix kind of controversy and the Netflix issues are going to be almost like a test case for what will happen with VR. Because I mean, VR is going to eat up a lot of bandwidth. It's going to need to be really fast to keep latency. We want to have kind of massively multiplayer online VR games. That's going to require a lot of bandwidth and a lot of like really high speeds.
Yeah.
So we're going to need to have people that are going to be the service providers providing those massively multiplayer online games or meeting spaces or whatever it is. They're going to need to kind of be aware of net neutrality issues and making sure that they can kind of acquire the bandwidth that will be necessary.
Speaking of bandwidth, do you think we have the infrastructure to the current internet, information infrastructure, bandwidth infrastructure to be able to withstand a massive multiplayer online virtual reality games across an ecosystem?
I think that there needs to be certain improvements in order to kind of make that a reality. I mean, I think that you could probably piece something together, if you kind of do, if you're smart about, what you're communicating with, and you may be able to kind of do your computing locally and kind of import, just specific aspects of the game or specific interaction elements to your local computer and have the computation done on site. There may be ways to piece that together, but I think for truly kind of, if you're doing the computing in the cloud and just kind of jacking in, that you're probably going to need some advancements.
Walk me through your vision. What do you think? What everybody has their own personal vision of what virtual reality will become. What do you think will be? What is your personal vision of what this technology can be?
I think it can be ubiquitous. I think it can be kind of everything that the internet is now. Virtual reality will be. I mean, you have, Facebook is just ridiculously popular. People are posting pics and videos and thoughts and what have you. I mean, a VR meeting space, a VR place where you can kind of hang out with your friends and hang out with your family that maybe are geographically dispersed. I mean, that would be huge. That would be immense. I talked briefly about kind of kill your commute. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see, VR workspaces kind of pop up. Just kind of in the development of VR, we're scattered. Right now we're kind of we're a small group of people that are extremely passionate about it. And, I run the New York City VR Meetup, and I've spoken to the various other meetup organizers. And, it would be great if we could meet in a virtual space and kind of get all the VR enthusiasts together, but not just like in a chat room, but in together where I could look you in the eye and work with you.
Yeah.
And that's my vision. And I think that it will happen. I think that there are a lot of technological hurdles that we're going to have to get over in order to get there. But I see it as almost inevitable. Like, we will get there, and I look forward to it.
How so in my opinion, I don't think it takes a neuroscientist to realize that technology is changing the way we are and the way we think and the way our brain is functioning. I don't think I talked about this earlier. Like, I think we're all addicted, or most of the people around me are addicted to the internet. And I never thought that I would have to. I never thought that I would end up sleeping next to my cell phone all the time. And it's an extension of me now, and it's weird. So in that same vein, do you think virtual reality will enhance us, or will it disconnect us more from each other? What do you think? How will it change our brain?
I think for most people, I think it will be an overwhelmingly good thing, right? I think that it will, people talk about being addicted to the internet. I mean, addiction is kind of a medically defined phenomenon where it has negative consequences. I use the internet a lot, but I don't think I'm addicted to it. It doesn't have negative consequences for my life. In fact, I feel more connected with more people. I mean, I speak to people that I went to college with, that I went to graduate school with, that I did various trips with when I was younger, and I'm connected to them in a way that I would never have been able to connect with them.
Yeah.
Before the internet. And do I use it a lot? Sure, but I could stop any time. I mean, I think that it's more of a tool that we use a lot, and it's not necessarily an addiction. Is there the potential for kind of dark futures in VR? Sure. I mean, the Matrix kind of painted a pretty grim picture of kind of people plugged into pods, not moving, just kind of jacked into this VR.
Yeah.
And is that a possibility? Sure. I mean, I think that for some people, or for lots of people at some times, maybe there's a risk of, if you're presented with a gamified, beautiful, safe, fun virtual space, that's going to be a lot more attractive than kind of the real world is sometimes. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely the risk of just sinking into that and losing touch with the reality 1.0.
What about the question of privacy? Well, I mean, we are, it's no secret that all of us everywhere are either being monitored, or information that we release out into the ether is being stored somewhere. How do you think this dichotomy, how do you think this will be played out inside of virtual reality? I had a conversation earlier with a developer who was saying, the NSA later on is going to be able to have the ability to look at what you look at, which is kind of weird and awkward.
And I think the concept of privacy is rapidly evolving and changing.
Yeah.
In a digital world where your keystroke can be monitored, or a virtual world where your sight lines can be monitored and your movement can be monitored, that easily, the concept of privacy is going to change fundamentally. I mean, how is it going to work out? I don't know. Like, let's wait and see. But I think that with the internet, privacy became a question kind of after the fact. By the time people were just like, whoa, what about privacy? It was kind of too late.
Yeah.
And so I would hope that people developing in the VR space will have an eye towards privacy, from the beginning, and build to the extent that it's possible, kind of build the privacy in, from the beginning. And let's be aware of that going forward.
Yeah, definitely. How about coming back to the real world? How about, I've seen a few other HMDs and other companies, either in Europe or I mean, they're obviously competitors with Oculus. I think one of them's called Vriela or something.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah, how do you think that will there be a clash sometime in the future between these two guys?
Well, I mean, from the standpoint of a consumer, competition is good.
Yeah.
I mean, competition. You know, if Oculus had a competitor now where they could kind of be pushing each other and testing each other and, you know, keeping each other on the ball, I think that would be great. And there will be competition for them. And as soon as, you know, they're successful, you know, the other people are gonna jump on. So there definitely will be competition. And, you know, I think that competition is healthy. Without competition, kind of things get stagnant.
Yeah.
So there will be competition, and it will push the industry forward.
Yeah, I just hope that there are standards or somehow, you know, because I figured if it's this virtual reality paradigm that is being built, I would hope that the people that are at the front lines building it are perhaps taking in the lessons from the internet, you know, from the .com bubble, from you know, all these different points in history. I think, yeah, this thing that can be built could be really, really useful for humanity. And yeah, competition is extremely useful. How about the Android platform in terms of virtual reality? Are you aware? Have you seen the DuroVis Dive or the VR Ace?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, in terms of standards and in terms of kind of inter-system operability, I think Android shows a lot of promise for kind of being that operating system that may be the answer to kind of having standards and having, you know, where whoever your head-mounted display is, it make sure it operates, you know, on this system. I've seen the VR Ace, you know, in the sense of I've seen it on the internet. I haven't held one in my hand or tried it out. And I have seen some of the other ones, but, you know, the only one I've tried is the Rift.
Okay. Yeah, the DuroVis Dive, I would say I have one, and it's I would say is a very upbeat, very pretty looking little cousin to the Oculus Rift.
Right.
Yeah, I have HTC One. The resolution on my phone is a lot better than the Rift, but the immersion that the Rift gives you is bar none compared to the other guys. Yeah, and you're right. I think the Android platform would be a great place to set about, you know, perhaps standards. Do you think the Oculus will put themselves out as a true platform, really? Because for the longest time I felt like they've been sort of, you know, tiptoeing between being a peripheral, being something that people can use all around, and being a platform themselves. Can they have their cake and eat it? Do you think they'll be able to pull off? Yes, we're a platform, and we're also a peripheral if you want to make it, you know, pair up with something else.
I mean, I think at least initially they have to be a platform. I mean, they have to be a platform to some degree to kind of facilitate the adoption of VR. I mean, if they have a great HMD, if it's the best one in the world, which it is already, but I mean, if it's, you know, creates presence and does all these things that it needs to do, you know, without facilitating content to end user experiences, it's not gonna work. So I think that they need to, at least initially, play an active role in being a platform and having and providing that for developers and end users.
How can we talked about how patent law can hinder, you know, virtual reality, but how do you think patent law and trademark law, the law itself, how do you think is there a way that this system, this tool of humanity, can be also used to the benefit of virtual reality, the community / humanity?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that I think patents are great for is for independent inventors and small companies and startups. You know, if you're able to develop something that is a real innovation and get a patent on it, then, you know, you can then license that patent to everybody. And I think that one of the most exciting things, and one of the reasons that I've kind of moved away from biology and gotten more into computers and software, is because of the democratization of the development. I mean, you need $1 million, you need $5 million to, you know, do neuroscience experiments. It's like you need, you know, a $500 computer to develop your own games. And I think that we're going to start to see real interesting developments and kind of real innovation from tinkerers, from makers that are kind of working on their own, developing, whether it's hardware, whether it's kind of an exercise bike that hooks up to your VR display in your computer, whether it's an innovative way to capture video. I mean, I think that you're going to start to see a lot of really cool stuff kind of springing up organically, grassroots, not from Microsoft and Sony, but from, Tim in Illinois, who is playing and is just passionate about it. And I think for democratization of technology, the way that Tim is going to protect himself from Microsoft stealing his idea is not that Microsoft steals, but from it is with a patent and it is with intellectual property. And so, I think that's where I do a lot of my work, is with independent inventors and startups, and where their real innovations are going to move a technology forward. And I hope to see that happen with VR, and I think we will see it happen with VR.
I think so too. My belief is that virtual reality will touch every segment of our society, indirectly or directly. And perhaps, would you happen to have any ideas as to how biology and virtual reality could merge sometime in the future? Have you thought about that?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot going on with biofeedback stuff, and incorporating your body's responses into what's happening in the virtual space. There's talk about kind of using externally mounted EEGs or electroencephalograms to kind of monitor your brain waves, so that maybe you can control things or influence things in a virtual environment using your thoughts. You start to talk about brain-computer interface technology, and how can we more directly influence our brain to give us a more immersive experience. I think that there's a lot, particularly in the brain-computer interface space. You're going to see a lot of rapid development there.
Yeah, Eric, it has been a pleasure.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I've had an awesome time. You have given me so much to think about. How can people stay in touch with you? How can people keep up? When is the next meetup? All that good stuff. Right.
So check out anyone who's in New York, New Jersey, Long Island. Definitely check out the New York City Virtual Reality Meetup. I'm in the process of trying to organize something on Long Island, but it's super easy to get into Manhattan, and we'd love to have you. We always have at least 2 riffs set up so people can try out the latest tech demos. Anyone who wants to get in touch with me can check out my website at greenbaumpatent.com or my blog at greenbaumpatent.wordpress.com. You can find my number or my email through that, and I'm happy to answer questions from anyone at any time. Awesome. Well then, Eric, looking forward to having you back on the show, and again, thank you for your time. Great. Thank you for having me, and I'll be in touch.